Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd. Today we're talking about Farscape, an episode called The Return of Durka. Now, Durka is a peacekeeper captain who commanded the Zelbinian and believed dead for the last 100 cycles. Now, the ship had been discovered by the Moya crew during the episode called DK Tech Girl. In that episode, Rigel had seen his corpse, or at least he thought he had, because in this episode we realized that Rigel was mistaken. Durka faked his own death, and he was later captured by the Nibari and went through a cryogenic mind cleansing that left him free of evil, as Nibari Captain Salas described it. However, on board his ship was Chiana, who was a prisoner, something of a street urchin, being taken back to Nibari Prime for the same treatment that they'd given Durka. The ship had collided with Moya coming out of Starburst and was taken aboard for repairs. Chiana was put off in one of Moya's detention cells, and she tells Crichton that the mind cleansing is a conditioning torture that makes one a compliant zombie. Crichton believes she's being unjustly held, and the episode ends with Chiana joining the crew. Now, beyond the certain amount of suspense that's brought in this episode, we know that they're going to get out of it all right. And we know from seeing the series before that Chiana becomes a regular part of the crew. However, at the time, even the producers weren't certain that Gigi Edgley was going to work out. They were putting her on as a guest star with the idea that if the chemistry worked right between her and the rest of the staff, they would keep her on. And if it didn't, they would have a scene where she was shot by Salas and killed rather than just minorly injured. However, it turns out that she got along really well with everybody, especially with Ben Browder, who they still have a very strong friendship. His calling her Pip was something that he did before they actually went in front of camera with it. So it has something about the fact that Browder's personality does not differ too much from that of Crichton. However, Gigi Edgley she's not the petty crook and seductress that her character would be. The reason we know this is because we had an opportunity to meet her probably 15 years ago. We were at a Comic-Con. It turned out that we were in the same hotel as she was staying, and I was going into the elevator to get some snacks for the kids, and she was in the elevator and must have noted my surprise of seeing her, and she invited me into the elevator, and on the way down wants to hear my entire story and my family and things like this, and said that she'd be, very happy to meet those. So what happened was that on the next morning when we go to the Comic-Con and find her booth, she treats us like we're just a bunch of distant cousins she hadn't seen in a while, and was very forthcoming with, especially with the kids. And in fact, that evening when we got back to the hotel, she was in the lobby and offered to tell the kids all her stories. They were big fans. And they got pizza and spent much of the evening, well into the night, with her stories. And they were impressed with it to the point that they've kept all the pictures that we took of her. So I don't have anything to show you here today. However, she was very nice, very forthcoming, and with even 15 years since Farscape had been out of production, she was certainly ready to talk about it, and that she would go back in a New York Minute if they ever called her for that. Anyway, that was a very pleasant thing there. We learned some things about why she stood like she did, the idea she wanted to be kind of a wild animal kind of idea. And that worked pretty well, especially since the wardrobe that she had made it difficult for her to move. It made part of the way that that worked. She also talked about some various other things that she had done with the Jim Henson Company, and was all in all a very delightful person to meet. And we're glad that we did. The kids are too. They left it kind of up in the air as to whether it was that Chiana killed Salas or if it was Durka that did, and what caused Durka to be able to break his spell that he was under. However, he gets away, but probably will not make it very far. So anyway, a very good episode there, and we hope that you will stay with us because we have some other stories to tell as time goes on. This Thursday, we have Professor O coming in to talk about Young Frankenstein. That should be interesting. That's coming up on Thursday. We appreciate you watching this, and I hope that you'll join us when Professor O comes in, and we're going to talk about Young Frankenstein. It should be interesting. So that's coming up on Thursday, and we'll be back next Tuesday with another review of Farscape. Until then, don't go far.